him down. Woo! IU, America, they got a football team now.
Hello again, everybody. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith, and welcome to another edition of the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Hoosier.com. It helps to have your mic unmuted, but it's been a crazy day today for me as working this morning with Jim Coyle on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio with having Brett Murphy pop on and getting to talk to him. We'll talk more about that here in a second, but I think we've got all systems go now. But we want to thank you all for joining us here this evening as we are right up top of the start of the 2025 season. And with that being said, the Indiana Hoosiers are getting ready to get beyond the talking season and start putting it out on the field like we know they can. But we're going to have to make sure that we give them all the opportunities we can now, from the national headlines to program news tonight, our deep dive into the defense. This is how this show will go tonight. Don't want to miss it. And we're going to get talking about a couple things here in a second, but also want to talk about the interview this morning with Brett Murphy from the on3.com group with his article, not only on the Indiana Hoosiers non-conference schedule that he firmly is in dispute with in terms of what Indiana has scheduled in their non-conference schedules. But we also talk about the playoff makeup, the 24 to 28 proposal team that the Big Ten commissioner and the Big Ten conference is floating around. It wasn't supposed to be released, but for some round it got leaked. And all of a sudden now that's a part of the news cycle. But we got Brett's talk on that. We'll get a chance to hear a couple of his comments regarding the article and the college football playoffs tonight. But that reaction to McMurphy's piece on Indiana scheduling kind of took a little bit of a shot at Indiana athletic director Scott Dolson in a roundabout way, and Coach Cignetti. At the same time, I think because Coach Cignetti utilized the wording or the comment about adopting the SEC scheduling philosophy, that in itself kind of made him a public enemy number one for all the sportscasters and writers out there. And like I told Jim Coyle on the morning show this morning, there's no such thing as bad press. Indiana's been in the national news cycle for the better part of 2 weeks, maybe 3. And the best thing about it is that means everybody is thinking about Indiana football, something that we've never seen around here in a long, long time when you think about it. So we'll get to that here in a second as well and get, that take on that. And Indiana had their last scrimmage getting ready to head into game prep versus Old Dominion. We've got to talk a little bit about this $50 million 20-year naming rights deal for the stadium turf at Indiana Memorial Stadium. And I also want to proudly announce that the Hoosier Tailgate is a proud affiliate now of Fanatics, and Fanatics Store is a great resource to get all your game day apparel. They've got about anything and everything that has to do with Indiana. You can get that link on my X page at Hoosier Tailgate, and it will be in my bio section, and it says Linktree there. Or I will also add it into all the descriptions there. I know they did have a special going on, and it was a 25% off plus free shipping. So if you're looking for some game day apparel, t-shirts, pullovers, sweaters, quarter zips, which are my favorite, head on over there, use my link to the Hoosier Tailgate storefront, and you can see what's all available there to get ordered prior to that next week starting game against Old Dominion. But I wanted to make an announcement of that. And if we would happen to generate a sale there, we thank you very much for that, as we will earn a little bit of a commission. We did have a sale from my own personal store, the Hoosier Tailgate store, for a couple of T-shirts, and I do appreciate that as well. And you can find that in the Linktree bio, on the bio page as well, or I'll put it in the description of the videos. We get to this depth chart. We're going to talk about the full breakdown, position by position, who I think are in the top 22. It is, in my opinion, a loaded defense this year with a lot of talented players that are going to be able to get in and out of that lineup and provide a lot of depth for Brian Haynes and that Indiana defense after they came off a stellar year defensively. A lot of tops in the nation in that regard. So that's the biggest thing with tonight, is talking about that. But let's go back here. Let's talk about Brett McMurphy's appearance this morning on Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, as I was co-hosting, and talk a little thing about his article, which basically said that Indiana's non-conference schedule is garbage. And I hope that I can pull this up, and we're going to hopefully be able to take a look, listen to this of Mr. McMurphy this morning.
So look, if Indiana fans are fined for an 11-year stretch of going to the stadium in the non-conference and seeing a bunch of tomato cans, that's totally up to them. And again, whether this was Indiana or my alma mater, Oklahoma State, I would feel the same way. This is not an anti-Indiana pitch. This is not an anti-Big Ten pitch. It's an anti-playing a bunch of garbage pitch. And that's how I feel about it. And if there's other schools out there that are doing it, please tell me that I've overlooked them, because I'll have the same take on these guys. But again, an 11-year stretch, Indiana from 2019 to 2029 will have played one non-conference team that's a power league team, and that's Louisville. And, you can make the argument, well, the Big Ten's so tough and yada, yada, yada. Excuse me. It's not that tough. Okay. It's not that tough. And you mentioned, excuse me, I apologize. You mentioned this year where they have, Oregon, they have Penn State within the conference. Illinois is ranked.
That was Mr. Brett McMurphy's take on the Indiana schedule, and you can catch all that in its entirety on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, Jim Coyle's Twitter account at Jim Coyle ISB, or go to the YouTube page to listen to that full interview with Brett this morning. And I think what his thing was an argument for the fans wanting more games at home that are against more Power 4 opponents, like Virginia, like a Louisville, and so forth and so on. I have no qualm with that. I really don't. The qualm I had, and I kind of said on Twitter that I thought he was foolish in his assessment, is this thing with Indiana is old because they're just getting picked on, number one, because there are a couple schools out there in the SEC that is still mad at Indiana that they got into the college football playoffs with an 11-1 record. And two, they're trying to deflect from some of the other schedules out there that are very similar to Indiana's, like Ole Miss, who has a game against Tulane and FAU. They play in week 8. They play the Citadel. And their other game mixed in there is against an ACC foe, but I can't remember. But their schedule isn't all that tough as well. And Indiana's strength of schedule right now is 30. Their strength of schedule is 30th in the country. So I think his argument was more so about the fans wanting more of those games against more talented P4 schools in the same boat that is Indiana, like a Virginia, to play them or match up against the Louisville. I know they got Notre Dame coming down the road, but evidently this was something that Coach Cignetti had in his contract about playing 2 group of 5 schools and 1 FCS school. And the flip side is those group of 5 schools that get paid, they get paid a lot of money. And for some of them, that floats the entire athletic department's budget. So he has that a little bit on the flip side of it. He's trying to help those schools out. But on the true side of it, he wants those games to be a great warm up for their battle in the Big Ten. And when you're playing a Big Ten 9 conference games, you just can't afford to get beat up in weeks 1 and 2 of the season because you want to play Virginia or, whatever. You look at the Texas-Ohio State game in a week. Yeah, that's a great game on the national headlines. But do you want Arch Manning to go out there and get hurt week 1 and your star quarterback be gone for the year before you even start because you want to go play a national televised game against the Buckeyes in Texas, of a game that probably won't have any bearing on the college football playoffs whatsoever, And so there's a double side to it. I understand where he's coming from with it. And at the same time, I'm kind of at the other side of the equation when it comes to that and understand Indiana's viewpoint on how they are wanting to play just those 3 games with 2 group of 5s and an FCS school because they play a 9-game conference Big Ten schedule and everything else. The other thing is, and I'm going to play this for you too, we did mention about the new college football playoff model that is going to give more credence to strength of schedule and basically strength of schedule win. In other words, what is your schedule like at that specific in time against an opponent? And was it an above average opponent? Was it a below average opponent? Did you win it? Did you, not win it? Or did you get blown out? Type of setup. And on top of that, there are going to be some other criteria that creep in the equation. Zach Osterman had a great article on the Indy Star kind of breaking some of that out. So he has a better take on it from A to Z than I do right at this moment. But we talked a little bit about that as well. And let's hear what Brett McMurphy from on3.com had to say this morning. The proposed college football playoff proposal the Big Ten made with either 24 or 28 teams. And I personally believe as well as that's a little bit too much when it comes to things of that nature. We're still at 12 and all of a sudden we're going to double it in a year or two. Kind of give us your thoughts on that as well, coming from your background as much as you've had in college football.
Yeah, excuse me. I just think it's good for college football. And look, it doesn't matter if the Big Ten suggested it, if the SEC suggested it, or Conference USA. I mean, I don't like it. It's not to say that 2014 deserving to go to the college football playoff, because they're not. It's for one simple reason, and that's to generate more revenue. Excuse me. Anyone that says anything differently, it obviously has had their head in the sand and hasn't looked around at what's going on in college athletics right now. All of these conferences, all these schools, they're trying to generate as much revenue as possible.
I think we can all agree with the fact of that and making that the 2018 proposal by the Big Ten potentially is not a really realistic model to follow. And I agree with him on that front. And I think we've got to walk a little before we run to something that's bigger and better in the eyes of perception and not reality when it comes to the college football playoffs and how many games that ultimately entails for everyone that will be involved. Now, while the school schedule talk grabs headlines, the Hoosiers themselves are focused on what's right in front of them as they finished up a scrimmage on Tuesday, situational type of scrimmage, where they got a chance to work on some things in the stadium on Tuesday, and they essentially broke camp and now are focusing their attention today and the rest of this week on Old Dominion as they get themselves prepared for the 2025 season, with the depth charts being settled. Pure and simple, Fernando Mendoza, while it's not come out and specifically gave a press conference announcing him, I don't think there's any surprise here that he is going to be QB1 come next Saturday. So right now, the Indiana Hoosiers are preparing for the Old Dominion Monarchs, a team that coach that's in his sixth season there feels like this is his best team ever. And you go back and look at their history over the last couple of years against some of these Power 4 teams. They've been pretty good against them. And Indiana better be prepared to take this game very seriously, or they're going to come out licking their wounds if they don't. But that's a good sign. We're in game week. Remember, over 9,000 tickets were still available for that game there at Bloomington, 2:30 kickoff. So hopefully they get us close, or if not, a sellout by the time the ball kicks off there next Saturday. And speaking of big news around the program, Indiana just landed a major sponsorship deal from Merchants Bank, where they're going to name the new artificial turf field as a major sponsor for the turf field. $50 million over 20 years. And that is a big deal. And you talking money in the coffers for Indiana's athletic department as a whole. $50 million over 20 years. I think Ohio State just did one something around 54, 55. I think Texas did the same thing. You're going to start seeing these open sponsorships on the field, on the press box and things like that, because that is where big money can be brought to the table. And right now, Indiana was able to secure that from First Merchants down there in the Indianapolis, Bloomington. Of course, they're all over the state of Indiana. And it's a big, big, big deal in terms of what it brings in for the Indiana Hoosiers. So First Merchants will be on the field and fully displayed come week 1 of the season. And for the rest of the season, they will be the sponsors of the new turf field, which I'm hearing is awesome, kind of some new technology involved in it. And it's supposed to be better to prevent the, knee injuries that people were having on the old type of surfaces. So we're anxious to see what's going on there. And, but $50 million, that's a pretty good payday. We talked about the Fanatics Hoosier store. It's a great little thing that we've got going with them. And they got a full page dedicated to Indiana Hoosier apparel and other items. So get on over there, pick up your favorite gear. The link's in my link tree in my bio, or I will have it fully displayed in the description of this. Now, what we're here for, let's talk some of the headlines as we get into this 2025 breakdown of our defense and the starting where this was all taking us to, kind of getting into that too deep look for the Indiana defense and Brian Haynes. And there's no question that we are about to break down the entire projected too deep, a unit led by one of the most explosive players in the conference, edge rusher Mikael Kamara, a dominant transfer from a dominant transfer to a rising star, this defense that's going to put the Big Ten on notice. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about sustaining the historical success of 2024. As Coach Sig has made it crystal clear, they're not here to sustain. They're here to get better every single day. That journey, that next step starts with a defense that has all-American talent at every level, where you're talking about a group that is ready to be one of the most feared and disruptive units in the entire country. And I fully believe that. If you're fired up as I am about this Hoosier defense, do me one favor, hit that like button and subscribe. We're going to be with you every step of the way this season. We'll have film breakdown, analyzing matchups, and tracking this team's journey through the Big Ten. You're not going to want to miss a single section, so hit that notification bell to let you know when a new video is scheduled to go live, and we will start going 2 times a week next Monday at 7:30 and Thursday at 7:30 as we get into game week. And remember, we are going to do something with the Hoosier.com, a roundtable discussion about this Indiana team and the season that we are embarking on. So stay tuned for that, because that will be coming out sometime the 1st of next week. The likes of Zach Browning, Alec Lasley, Drew Robinson, you name it, they're going to be a part of it, and myself, and we're going to have a little fun with a little roundtable discussions in some respects. Let's get right back into what we need to get into, talking about this defense and defensive line. And this group has started with that superstar, the guy who keeps the offensive coordinators up at night, redshirt freshman edge, Mikael Makara. This kid, I tell you, he is such a fun guy to watch on film, as well as watching some of his stuff of last year was just truly phenomenal. And a lot of NFL scouts have been in. But when you think about Indiana, that's right. We're talking about Coach Cignetti, who brought Kamara from James Madison, where he blossomed into a first-team All-Big Ten performer and a third-team All-American. He is ranked by ESPN by the number 35th player in all of college football heading into this season. And it's easy to see why. Last year in 2024, he was one-man wrecking crew, racking up 10 sacks and 15 tackles for losses. According to Pro Football Focus, he's Indiana's best defensive player and finished the season with 64 pressures, which led to the Big Ten and second among of all Power 4 players. And he was left off one of the all Big Ten preseason conference teams. And now they still got Surratt and, D'Angelo and Fish. But you leave off a player like that, that's a little bit of an embarrassment, if you ask me, in that regard. That just doesn't make sense. But what makes Kamara so special, 6'1", 265, he's just an explosive kid. He has an incredible get off. He's shifty. He has the relentless motor to close on a quarterback. He is pure disruption. And this year, they're going to move him into that stud position in defense in Brian Haynes' scheme, where they can utilize him in the up position as much as anything. We get into that situation where, man, oh man, you get a chance to put him in a linebacker position and use him in different types of schemes, whether he's up, he's down, doesn't matter. It's going to be an interesting dynamic because of this scheme that Brian Haynes likes to run. And it's a hybrid role. That's the part defensive end, part linebackers, designed to let him kind of roam, where he can make some chaos on his own. And he's not shy about his goals either. He has stated that he wants to be aim for like 20 sacks this year with which would shatter the school record. He knows if he wants to hit the number and earn Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year honors, he has to even be better, especially in those biggest moments. He's just not a leader by example anymore. He has become more vocal. He's helping teammates, and he is the undisputed alpha of this defense. But the real reason for all the hype around this D line isn't just one guy. It's built around, it's about the wall they've built around him. The Hoosiers lost some serious dudes to graduation in NFL draft picks CJ West and James Carpenter, two all Big Ten honorable mentions who anchored the nation's top run defense in 2024. So this is a huge hole to fill. And what did they do? They hit the transfer portal and landed some absolute players or monsters up front. The one that I think is a steal for Indiana, and I said this when they got him, was this young man right here, Kellen Wyatt from Maryland. Some believe this is kind of a classic Cignetti pickup with a proven productive guy on tape. He's 6'2", as you can see. He's 262 pounds, and he brings a ton of experience to the Hoosiers. And he's not just experienced, he's productive. He led Maryland last year with 8 tackles for loss. In fact, his best game in 2024 was right in Bloomington against the Indiana Hoosiers, where he had 2 tackles for loss and a sack. Now, that production's in Bloomington, and Coach Shannon loves him, calling him a high-effort, high-energy, intelligent guy. He's expected to be a perfect complement to Kamara, giving offenses another legitimate pass rusher to worry about. And I fully think that this kid is going to have a dynamite year and provide that 1-2 punch with Kamara on the outside. And I do think in some respects, that's what he does for Indiana, does that and does it well. And I do think he's going to add to this defensive front where you got pressure on the outside from 2 guys that can flat out get it. Now let's move into the inside part of the equation. You know, we lost CJ West and Carpenter, really could really hurt us, but Curt Cignetti went out in the portal and brought in a headliner in the name of Hosa Wheeler, the transfer from Western Kentucky, big timer, and he is 6'4", and he's not 205. I take that back. He's more like 295. He's a big man, but he was a guy that Indiana went after at Western Kentucky, Conference USA. But he's a redshirt senior, 6'3", 300 pounds, or 6'4", 300 pounds. So you can see where I was off some. And he's ready to be a Big Ten defensive tackle. He was first team all conference in Conference USA last year, putting up an insane stat line for interior linemen, 74 tackles, 5 TFLs and 2 sacks. Even more impressive in that interior lineman snaps played. This dude is a machine. And I do think he will be a great asset for what we lost in CJ, because I think he is pretty much the same as CJ. He may be even a little bit more explosive. Starting alongside Wheeler will be a key returning piece, and that's redshirt junior Tariq Tucker. While the transfers are grabbing the headlines, Tucker is a crucial part of this defensive line rotation. He played in 129 snaps a year ago, so he knows the standard. Having that continuity is invaluable as they work in the new guys. It's a good bet. He's going to be a day one starter, providing a steady hand in the middle, coming off a great spring session that has catapulted him into a very good fall camp. So that's the starting 4 up front. You can see it's a pretty tough group of players in that first line of defense. Well, let's talk about some of these guys in the rotation, like Dominic Ratcliffe. He's also a redshirt senior from Texas State. Honorable mention All Sun Belt in 2024 and could easily push for starts himself. Then there's Stephen Daly, a senior transfer from CJ West's alma mater, Kent State. And he's likely going to be a backup to Wyatt or share the responsibility. He started every game for Kent State last year, had 9 TFLs and 4 sacks. And you can't forget about the returning guys ready to step up. And my breakout candidate of the returners is sophomore Mario Landino. You guys need to watch this cat. He played as a true freshman and showed some serious flashes, and he can play multiple spots along the line as is expected to take on a much bigger role this year. Another name to watch in that too deep when you think about it. The depth continues with guys other than those, some true good freshmen from the recruiting class that I think will be guys that will be down the line a little bit, but Indiana has some great depth there. And I do think one also in that equation to keep an eye on this year is Jamari Monette. And there are some talented freshmen in there, but, you know, Monette's a kid, too, that I think kind of gives him that ninth body, if you want to say. So you can see with this talented front, and and John already asked that question, where those men? He fits in there, and I do think he'll get some in that rotation, but they give him, that gives them that depth they needed to ward off injuries and things like that. And then maybe some of those freshmen could potentially come into the equation as well when you think about it. And it's going to be a really good group of guys. And then, you know, Coach Kuntz and what he's done and all the things that he's potentially brings to the table as a defensive line coach, I think it's going to be a good dominant front heading in to this 2025 season. And that defensive line, I'm really excited about, and I'm looking for them to maintain that hard defense to run the ball against, because they're going to need it. They're going to have to force teams into things they don't want to do, and that's get predictable and become a offense where a defense can just light it up on you and cause problems. Now let's jump over right into the linebacking crew. And the D-line has the most depth. The linebacker corp is anchored by arguably the most important guy and leader on the entire team, senior Aiden Fisher. You know, if Kamara is the alpha of the D-line, Aiden Fisher is the quarterback of the defense. A first-team All-American last year, Fisher is exactly what Cignetti wants in a player. Selfless, bought in, and a true leader. He followed the coaches from James Madison. His impact has been massive. He played in a team-high 744 snaps and racked up 118 tackles. He's just not a thumper. He's smart, makes all the defense he checks, and his knowledge of the system brings a sense of calm to the whole unit. That right there, I'm telling you, is worth its weight in gold when you have a guy that is like a coach on the field and has that calming influence on the guys around him. And that quality alone is huge. Now, Aiden Fisher could have left, but he decided to come back. And when he made that decision, I guarantee you there was a loud roar coming out of the coach's office at Indiana because of all that and getting him back for one more year. That's having Aiden. And I missed this one. The Big Ten may have the 5 best defensive units in the college football: Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, and Indiana. Well, I appreciate your commenting, New Life, and I kind of agree with you. The Big Ten does have some powerful looking defenses this year, and Indiana is a part of that discussion. And like I said, he's a calming factor in that unit. And you want to, okay, you think he's going to win in Happy Valley this year. Well, I hope you're correct. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, because that game, if it comes to fruition and Indiana goes into Happy Valley with everything on the line for them in the Big Ten, that's going to be a whiteout game, and it's going to be rocking in Happy Valley that day. Back to Aiden Fisher. He's already on the Buckus Award list this year, and expectations are high for him as well. And he is the rock that this defense is built around. In Indiana's 4-2-5 scheme, there are two main linebacker spots, with Fisher locking down the middle. The big question, who plays next to him? That guy looks to be sophomore Elijah Hardy. He started to shine as a freshman. Season went on in 2024, and he earned praise from Coach Cignetti. And despite playing limited snaps, he posted the team's highest run defense grade on PFF. He's an athletic, gifted player who started to figure it out around mid-season. After a full offseason, he's a clear front-runner to begin next to Fisher, and the combination of Fisher's smarts and Hardy's athleticism could be special. And when you lose a guy like Jalen Walker, who was that athletic linebacker, and Hardy played in games when Walker kind of got dinged up a little bit because he had that shoulder problem. I think this kid is going to be able to handle that and handle it well. And I like his athleticism, and I like the way he runs. Backers have got to be able to run. North, south, east, west. They've got to have hips, and they got to have vertical speed, and I believe he's got that in spades. Interesting, this was the one group where Indiana didn't bring in a single transfer. That tells you everything you need to know about the confidence the staff has in these players they already have. You know, you lose Walker, which is a notable departure, but they clearly believed Hardy is ready to step in, and the depth behind him is always solid. That comes from a pair of redshirt juniors when you have Isaiah Jones and Caden Turner. Both of these guys are more than capable linebackers who provide crucial experience. Jones will likely be the man backing up Fisher, and Turner seems to be provides that he's the same veteran presence behind Hardy. I believe in this defense, the 4-2-5, there will be plenty of situations where Indiana puts in up to 3 linebackers on the field. And those packages have experienced guys like Jones and Turner ready to go, and is a huge advantage. So when you get in those tough situations, short yardage, third and short, fourth and, whatever goal, you got an extra backer you can stack in there and become a better force of guys that can move. So while this may not look as deep as the defensive line on paper, this group is about quality. You have All-American fielder in Fisher, a rising star in Handy, and 2 reliable veterans behind them. They are the steady core that lets the monsters on the defensive line go hunt. And, baby, they're going to turn those boys loose, because I know what Bryant likes to do is he likes to get them lined up, make sure they're lined up correctly, and utilize their their smarts to, change things up on an offense, and, maybe be a 4-eye that slants out to a 4-0, on the outside. Excuse me. So you got that. You got Jones. I also think Utzinger is the guy to keep an eye on potentially as well. And then Caden Turner, because those are some of the guys that I think will be in the rotation potentially this year. And again, these are my projections. These are not fact, but you got a lot of guys in there. There's some guys that haven't played a lot, even though they're older, and they've been special team guys. So not to discredit anybody else that is in potential, and we will know more once we get into this true game week. But I do believe that gives you a solid foundation on those guys when it comes to that linebacker position room, with Fisher and Hardy being the 2 that Hardy's replacing Walker. And I think that may be an equal trade and maybe an upgrade. Who knows? but I love Aiden Fisher. I mean, that cat can play. He's smart. He's cool. And when you need him to make a play, he makes the play. That's the one thing about him. He will make the play. So let's head on over here. Let's talk about this secondary, which to me is pretty darn impressive. And I'm excited about this group because they could have so many different types of lineups with this group when you think about it. But man, oh man, it's an exciting group for me in terms of who they got. Of course, the headline is another returning All-American, and this unit's built on speed and playmaking ability, a perfect fit for the 4-2-5. But let's start at cornerback. And the best lockdown guy in probably the Big Ten is D'Angelo Pons. He's the third returning All-American on this defense, a testament to the talent Cignetti has brought in. ESPN ranked him the 82nd player in the country, and he's on the Nagurski Trophy watch list. Like many others, he came in from JMU. His growth as a leader was huge, and he's always been a guy that leads by example. But he's starting to become a little more vocal, which I like. He's a true cover corner who can erase an opponent's best receiver, which is a game changer for the defense. He is your lockdown corner. Starting on the other corner spot will likely be Jamari Sharp. He has been a regular in the rotation for the last 2 seasons, so he brings a ton of Big Ten experience, and he had a great spring and the fall as well. And that gives you 2 veteran guys on the corner. And it allows the coaches and the DC, Brian Haynes, to be aggressive up front, knowing that they have the guys that can handle themselves on an island. The depth of corner is really strong. The Hoosiers brought in 2 key transfers who will push for playing time. That's Ryland Gandy from Pitt and Knighton from Northern Illinois. When a former starter entered the portal, Coach Shannon hinted that he had Gandy and Knighton projected ahead of him anyway. That shows you how highly the staff thinks of these 2. They're just not depth. They're starting caliber players who give Indiana a legitimate 4-man rotation. And I'm telling you, that's huge, because when you need covered corners and you want to be aggressive as a defensive coach and get after an offense and bring some pressures, you've got to have guys in the back half that can cover. And last year, outside of D'Angelo, I don't think they really thought they had that on the field. And there was a lot of fire zone defenses being played last year in Indiana's scheme. And I know he's excited about what he's got in the back half of this year. In the 4-2-5 scheme, you have some what we call traditional safeties, plus a hybrid player that mostly gets called a husky or a rover. He's a versatile player who brings that 5th defensive back with linebacker duties. So think of a nickel. The leader of that safety room is Amari Farrell. Farrell is the only returning starter from last year's safety group, and he blossomed into one of the best in the conference. He's a versatile player who can line up all over the field, which is huge benefit as they work in the new pieces around him. He's poised, and he's had a true breakout season and the anchor of that back end. The Hoosiers hit the portal hard to fill out the other spots, bring in some experienced playmaker. One is Lewis Moore, the former Hoosier, who left and went to Ole Miss. He is projected to be a starter alongside Farrell. Now, the one thing is with Moore that we have to be aware of, he does have a court case August the 27th. So that is a little concerning. But the judge had given the NCAA and Lewis's attorney to mediate this and not bring it to a trial. And in some respects, basically said the NCAA would lose. So hopefully by the first of next week, we get some clarification on all that, because it's going to be huge in that regard, because that Lewis can play, boys. I mean, he was a big player when he was here for Indiana. He went to Ole Miss. Can't blame him. He wanted a different atmosphere, and, thought Ole Miss gave him that best chance to go, get some wins, but go play in a different conference. But bringing him back to Indiana was huge. And I know Brian Haynes feels the same way. And I hope that this gets cleared up and the kid can continue on this year, because that's one of the things in all this, is that outside of him and Farrell, you got guys that are going to be in that nickel position as well. But you've got Devin Boykin, the transfer from NC State, a really interesting player, ton of experience. He missed all of 2024 with the injury, so he might have flown under the radar. Indiana's banking on him to return in his 2023 form, where he had 54 tackles, 3 interceptions, but he's been a full participant all offseason, looks ready to go for a big comeback. So you got Farrell, Moore, and Boykin, then that gives you 3 veteran, versatile players on the back half. Of course, the biggest question mark for the entire defense might be the depth behind that starting trio at safety, but that answer could be one of the most exciting young players on the whole team, and that's freshman Byron Baldwin Jr. He was the crown jewel of the 2025 recruiting class, as we know, and one of the highest-ranked defensive signees in program history. He was a 4-star prospect who the Hoosiers won a major battle for his services after he briefly decommitted from Indiana. 6'2", has the size and skill to play right away. It's always tough to settle in and play a true freshman when you're making that jump to the Big Ten, but he may have the talent to go out and do it. And if he does, you find ways to work him in these first 3 games to get him those snaps that he needs to get all that under his belt with everything, because, after they play in that fourth, I think they play up to 4 games. You have to make a decision then on whether you're going to redshirt or not. So that gives them that in that respect and all that. But, he's one of those guys that in some cases, he's almost too talented to keep on the sideline. The depth comes from redshirt junior Bryson Bonds as well. Bonds has been with the program since 2020, and he's been a key special teams player. His experience and leadership are valuable for a room with a lot of new faces. Overall, the secondary is a fascinating mix of talent, where you have that shutdown corner in D'Angelo and a solid group of veterans and potential superstars in the making like Byron Baldwin Jr. They have the speed and versatility to take away advantage of pressure created by the front 7 and turn it into takeaways. And Indiana was really good at takeaways and points off takeaways a year ago. And that was a key component. So when you go back and look at some of these stats, go back and look at the takeaways and points scored off of takeaways. Indiana was quite good at getting points off of takeaways by the defense, which is huge. It's a huge concept. But I really like that back half. Jamari Sharp, I got Farrell. I think he's a stud. You got Moore, Pons, then, you got Knighton in there as well. And then, Baldwin, who knows what will happen. And with everything with that. But let's see a couple questions in here. Yeah, he does. He's a strong kid. He is a strong kid. There's no question. Yeah, we got him. You're right, Jason. All you have to say is Baldwin, and everybody knows what we're talking about when that kid's name is mentioned. He's a player. Yeah, great young man and a player. And I don't know if that was in reference to Mr. Sharp, but you can bet that both those young men are talented, but also great young men on and off the field in that regard. So I like this defense. I like for them to repeat some of these statistics down there at the bottom. 256 yards a game, only 80 yards of rushing given up, which I think made them second or third in the nation, but they led the country most of the year. They also had a great pass defense, giving up only 176 yards, but a lot of that came in games against Ohio State, the second half at Michigan, then, of course, a couple there at Notre Dame. But Indiana was really good pass defense. Third down efficiency, 32.74% is phenomenal for defense. Could be a little higher, but Indiana did a great job of keeping offenses into third and long situations most of the year. The red zone efficiency, when that is against points scored. So when an offense got the ball into the red zone, they scored 6 points. They only did it on a 56% of the opportunities that were given. Again, another phenomenal stat where Indiana was in the 80 percentile in that category. And then, of course, the last thing there, 15.62 points per game. That in itself, when you think of all the offenses in the Big Ten, the spread and the talent that's there, to only give up 15 points a game, you do that, you're going to win a lot of games, even if it's a 16-15 and your offense isn't really good. I mean, in some respects, that was Illinois' season last year. When you look at it, they weren't a juggernaut scoring touchdowns. They had a pretty good defense that kept them into things, and they were 10-3 overall, but a lot of their games were tight. I mean, Indiana had a winning margin of almost 20-plus points in a lot of their schedule last year, where Illinois was more in tighter ball games because their offense was so in some respects, even though they got, Altemeyer coming back, and they're coming off that big win against South Carolina. But one last thing, I want to talk about this defensive side of the ball. I got to think that we got to talk about breakout players on defense. And, we can sit here and talk about D'Angelo all day and Fisher and Kamara. We know those guys are good. But you always need that one guy on defense that, you weren't expecting the production that you got for him. Kind of that was a little bit of Tucker last year. He kind of came on in that scenario. But this year, to me, it's Landino. I believe he's one of those guys that brings that exclamation point to big-time high-pack defenses. He certainly comes out of nowhere when you watch him. And I think that makes him such a good defensive lineman and put him in the rotation last year as a true freshman. The biggest thing is Kuntz trusted him in the Big Ten trenches, and he held his own. I mean, it wasn't like he was getting really pushed around out there. And when you think about it, he's going to have to pick up some key snaps, and that's going to be key. And I do think that's where Landino comes into the fray. And that's not to slight any of those transfers that are coming in, but those guys are redshirt seniors. They've had tons of snaps. Ratcliffe and Hosa Wheeler and guys like that. Those are veteran players. But Landino's a sophomore. I mean, he's still a pup in some of it. And I don't think it's out of the equation that many Hoosier fans are going to know the name of Mario Landino by the time of the season's over. But that in itself, I think, is a good sign, and I hope it does happen. So there you have it. That's the full breakdown of the 2025 Indiana Hoosiers defense. I think a unit that's loaded with talent and experience. And the whole picture, when you look at it, you see a defense built to win in the Big Ten, because you've got to have a defense that can stop people and get off the field. And Indiana showed they could do that last year. And I don't care who you're playing, they did it pretty good. Ohio State, they did it. They stopped them on the 2-yard line on 4 downs, but the whole game they played from their own backs against the wall. Very seldom did Ohio State have to drive the ball much in that game. Look what they did to Michigan. They kept them at bay for the most part. And outside of the 99-yard touchdown run that gave up against Notre Dame, they really had kept Notre Dame in check in some ways. So, again, this defense has got, in my opinion, is a big strength of the football team. And up front, you've got you got some studs up there that we talked about: Kamara, Wheeler, Radcliffe, Tucker, Landino, Wyatt. I mean, you go right down the list, and you get nothing but power and speed out there. And then at linebacker, you add a guy in there like Fisher, if you can stay healthy. And then that guy's he's a warrior. He plays so many snaps. It's crazy. And he's the guy that runs the show on defense, the quarterback. And then you bring in Hardy, who's a dynamic guy anyway. And that gives you a pretty good duo there at linebacker position. They may be a little thin in terms of experience at that position, but I do think they've got pretty good guys in there. And then, of course, you've got the playmakers on the outside that allows this defense to go play man for man if they need to. Play a lot of one high, free safety, get your other safety involved in the run where you can get 8, 9 guys in the box for rundowns. And that's the one thing I like about this defense. Here's some of my final thoughts. This defense isn't just going to be good. I think it's going to be one of the most feared in the Big Ten. They have elite All-American talent at 3 different levels. They filled every need through an innovative work in the transfer portal, as well as when the 24 season was such a historic season at 11-2, but it feels like just last year was the start. This defense in 2025 has all the pieces to be even better and take Indiana football to another level. So get ready, because I think it's going to be a fun year defensively for Indiana, and a great feeling as an offensive coach to have that type of defense on the field. You're going to feel very confident in your calling of plays because you're going to get this defense that has got your back. Who are some of the most exciting to watch on this defense? Is it the Kamara, you guys think? Or is it Fisher? Is it Tucker? Let me know in the comments section. And there has been some there that, give me who you think on this defense excites you and what you think they're going to give us this year as a defense that comes back with high expectations. Now, I didn't jump into special teams, and I do that because there's so many unknowns there. But if you watch the interviews those guys did a couple weeks ago, you can't only come away with being impressed with those kids. And I could see why Sig has a lot of trust in his kicking, in his kickers and his kicking game. The punter last year had a easy year because they hardly punted. I mean, he got to run out for pregame, do a little kick here, do it at halftime, but he was on the sideline for most of the year, and I hope that continues in 2025. And their special teams, again, is a mirror image of their defense. It's the first defensive play when you punt it or you kick it off. That's how I look at it. It's your first defensive play, where punt return and kickoff return is your first offensive player of the season, of the game. And so if your special teams, especially your return game, can, average about 10 yards on a punt return and get to that level of, if you happen to return a kickoff, you're going to have one less first down your offense is going to have to get. That's how I believe when I look at it from an offensive perspective. Always thought that if your punt return can get 10 yards, it's one less first down you can get. And if they get 20, it's 2 less you have to get in a drive. And I think that's a huge thing. Let's see here. I should be glad they don't play Michigan this year. I'm high on the Hoosiers, but higher on the Wolverines. Well, here's what I think there, New Life. I I do think Michigan's defense is going to be really good again this year, but let's calm the expectations for this freshman quarterback until he proves that he can do it. And I'm not saying he can't. I mean, he's a talented kid, but it's an awful big step to go from a high school football field on Friday nights and stepping inside the big house and 105,000 looking at you. So we'll see what he gives them offensively and how he handles it. But they do have a defense that will keep him in things. Jason says Mendoza is sharp, has a cannon, and can run. Totally agree with that, Jason. I think he's going to give Indiana a lot of options in the offensive scheme of things in terms of moving the pocket, changing the launch point, add some QB runs into the equation as well. And I'm hearing Alberto has really, really improved, and his confidence is very high. He had a really good spring, and he's had a really good fall camp. So I know they're high on Alberto. Sig is taking Indiana to new heights. I believe that as well. I do. I wish Evans would have stayed on the sidelines at all. Yeah, I know that feeling, but you got it. It is what it is. Let's see here if there's anything outside of that in this thing before we end it tonight. And again, I thank you all for being here. But defensively speaking, I do think they're good. They got everything they need to be a dynamite defense. I think they're going to be fast, physical, and relentless. The three things that Sig says all the time. He wants a fast, physical, relentless team and improving every day and never, ever, ever get complacent. That's their thing. And they did a great job of that last year. But coupled with that offense, it's going to be a chance to be a really good year and a different year because of new faces, and you don't know what's going to happen. You could come into a year like this with high hopes with what you have on the field, and in this crazy game, you get a couple bad breaks, and you're all of a sudden looking cross-eyed at one another. But this Indiana team, I do think, has got the right guy pulling the trigger. And I do think that with that Hemby and Kalen Black and BB Jr., I think they got talent coming out the running back room as well. And, of course, the wide receiver. And I hope E.J. Williams can stay healthy because he's a big player maker down the field for Indiana. He can really break the top off of a defense and be a big threat. But he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay out of the training room. And he's got to make sure that he is pushing himself in practice. And from all indications right now, he has done that this year. Got off to a little slow start, like Sig said, but he's really come on of late and matured, which I think is a great, great, great sign. And, you think about a guy like Devin McCauley, and he's at Michigan now, and he's a good player, Had he stayed around here, who knows about things. But again, you can't worry about the guys that get away. You only worry about the guys you have, and that's what they do so, so good. Like I said, thanks for coming in and listening to my projected starters on the defense tonight, as well as offense last week. Next week, we start our 2 times a week schedule. Monday evenings at 7:30 and Thursday evenings at 7:30 as well. Mondays are more of a roundup of what Indiana did on Saturday game day, as well as looking and breaking down statistics and things of that nature. Now, we won't have that this Monday, but there's still plenty of things that we can discuss and talk about, and you're welcome to come back and be actively involved in that live session, because we want to get you guys talking about the season and things like that. And then Thursday, I will be breaking down Old Dominion and what to expect from the Monarchs on offense and defense, and get yourself ready for Saturday afternoon at 2:30. And remember, be looking early next week for the Hoosier.com Indiana Hoosier Football Roundtable. We'll get that out sometime next week. That's why you need to go to subscribe on the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, and follow us on Twitter. And so you're up to date when that will be released. That's going to be a good one because we got all the guys that have an opinion and guys that have been writing about the camp and stuff, talking about Indiana and what it will take this year. And I think it'll be a good thing that's come out early next week. And then, of course, you can always catch me on Jim Cole's show on Thursday mornings, and probably even more this year. We'll see what happens. But on Thursday mornings, we'll talk as in my normal time that I come on there. And maybe I'll do more than once a week this year. And then post-game show is still something that we are planning on doing after every game Indiana plays. We will have the Indiana Sports Radio post-game show and be listening to that as well. Well, I thank you again for joining us here tonight. Wish you all the best, and we will see you next Monday. For now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. You've been watching the Hoosier Football Tailgate defensive depth chart projections for 2025 right here on the Hoosier.com. Good night, everybody.